Hello students and welcome to another video. In this lesson, we are going to talk about data. And I am really excited about this lesson for a couple of reasons. One, I love data. I know it makes me a little nerdy, a little dorky, but I don't care. I love data. I think it's interesting. I think we can learn so much from it. And I really like looking at data in graphs because I think it's so much easier to understand that way. And so in this lesson, we're going to practice doing that just a little bit. So once again, here's our learning signposts. Anytime you see this listening icon, you can click on it and hear me explaining more on that slide. We're still in this first task where we're looking at using patterns in weather and data to understand extreme climates. And actually, graphs are a great way to just easily, boom, see those patterns. So what do we already know? In the last lesson, we explored that difference between weather, what's happening kind of right now, and climate, the average weather over many years. And in this lesson, we're going to learn more about the differences between graphs and tables. So last lesson, weather versus climate. This time, graph versus tables. Each have their place. They have different strengths and they have different weaknesses. We're going to practice using both to better understand climate. And so we're going to think about how can we use data to understand a climate. So science is all about exploring and understanding the natural world, and data is the way that we do that. And sometimes it's easier to understand that data by visualizing it using a graph or a chart or sometimes even a table. So this slide here, I made a video right here to kind of help you brush up on reading a data table. And here's another one that kind of helps you practice those skills, not made by me, by another teacher. And so watch these if you're kind of feeling a little lost on how you use a data table. Oops.
So let's have a look at this table. So we've got the
have them automatically starting. Okay. Here is the first data table we're going to look at. And so in this data table, here you can click here and you can see where I got the data for. It's for the average monthly temperature and average monthly precipitation or rainfall for Seattle, Washington. And so here you have the months up here, average temperature, and average precipitation. And so this is going to be your source where you can see the data really well to answer these questions here. And so you're just going to answer two really simple questions to the best of your ability. Doesn't have to be 100% right. You're just practicing using this data table and seeing if this tool is actually very useful. So it's okay if maybe you're not sure what the answer is because the data table isn't a good tool. That's what we're trying to figure out right now. And so the first question is it hot and rainy at the same time of the year? And so you would look at this data table, look at the temperatures. So the higher temperatures, see when those happen, and look when you have the highest numbers for rain and see when those happen and see if they happen at the same time of the year. And then you're going to say, what's the average temperature in December? So you'd find December, you'd find the average temperature. This one here is another video similar to the last one that's just kind of helping you understand how to read a climate graph. And there's the graph itself. So this one's pretty complicated, so I definitely recommend watching that video explaining the graph before you move on to answering the questions. And then these are those questions. And so it's the same idea here as with the table. We want to practice using the graph to answer the questions to see if a graph is a good tool for that kind of question. And so the first question is another big picture question. Is it dry and cold at the same time of the year? And so you'd look for when it's dry, which you're going to use the blue bars for rainfall. So when they're lowest, that would be when it's dry. And you're going to look for when it's cold, which is this red line. When the red line is lowest, that's when it's cold. And you're going to decide if those happen at the same time of the year. And then you're going to try to use this to find what is the average temperature in July. And so once again, that's the red line. You try to find the average temperature in July. And so this is not about necessarily being able to get the exact precise answer, but seeing is a graph a good tool for answering this question? And that's what you're going to do here. You've practiced that a little bit. Now you're going to say, do you think a graph or table is better for finding the exact number for a specific month? So which one of these tools do you think is better if you need to know the exact number for something? And then you're going to decide which one of these two tools is going to be better if you want to see the big picture for how temperature and rainfall are changing during the year. And make sure that you explain both of those. So that if you say the table is best for finding the exact number, why do you think it is the best for that? And why isn't the graph good for that? Make sure that you explain. And then finally, a reflection. So how do you think a climate graph for the Sahara Desert might look different from Seattle's? Be specific. So how do you think that temperature line might look different? Would it be a different shape? Would it be in a different place? And what about those precipitation, that rainfall? How might that be different for the Sahara Desert from Seattle? Would they be shorter? Would they be taller? Would they be the same the whole year? Would they change during the year? Talk about those things in your answer. And then think about if it's easier to compare two different climates. So if you had a graph for each of the Sahara and the Seattle, or a table for the Sahara and the Seattle, which one do you think would be more useful to compare those two different places' climates? And explain why you chose either a graph or a table as a better tool for comparison here. And then finally, if doing this lesson gave you a question that you think is really important, that's going to help us figure out our big question of how can people live in extreme climates, click here and add them to the form. And that is it for this lesson. See you later.